Today we're diving into the sobering yet important topic of child poverty in the United States. Poverty affects millions of children in America, and according to the U.S. Census, the national child poverty rate is 16.1%. Americans make more than 20% of the world's income, despite accounting for less than 5% of the world's population. Yet, poverty, not having enough money to meet basic needs, remains a major issue in the United States, affecting people of all ages. Today we're focusing on the rate of children living in poverty throughout the United States. Make sure you stay to the end of the video to answer the question we have for you. So we're looking at child poverty in the United States. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Oklahoma. Oklahoma has some decent cities. Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and of course, Slaughterville. Yeah, it's a thing. There's a town in Oklahoma called Slaughterville. Oklahoma, though, has poverty throughout the state. I mean, they have a lot of rural communities that are far behind the money-making curve. And if you don't believe me, go for a drive down any lonely road in Oklahoma. You will see enough poverty to last you a lifetime. So why are they so poor? Why do they have so many kids living in poverty? Oklahoma's economy relies heavily on the oil and gas industries, which can be unstable to say the least, leading to economic hardships for many families. Then you have educational challenges. The state has challenges with low educational outcomes and limited resources in schools, especially in the rural areas. Another thing that comes into play when it comes to poverty is the healthcare. When you don't have much access to healthcare, it really takes a toll on the poverty levels of any community, especially counties. A lot of missed days at work, a lot of people in debt because they didn't have insurance or something like that plays a big part. 19.8% of Oklahoma's children live below the poverty line. Number 9, Texas. This one might surprise a lot of you because all you ever hear about are the good things about Texas. Why everyone's moving to Texas. I'm moving to Texas to get a job. I'm tired of all the rules and taxes I gotta pay in California. I'm heading to Texas. So you just get this image that everyone's got a job there, everyone's doing great. Sadly, it isn't the case. A majority of the poverty in Texas is gonna be found near the southern border with Mexico. They've got a lot of little small towns that excel in growing tumbleweeds. If they could just find a market for tumbleweeds and dirt, they might be doing a lot better. But the economic factors play a big part in Texas' child poverty rate. Texas has significant income inequality, with a large population of low-wage workers. The state also faces challenges with affordable housing and costs of living in urban areas. There's a lot more have-nots than haves in Texas. 20.9% of Texas children live below the poverty line. Number 8, Kentucky. You know, if you go to some of their cities, you might not think they have a lot of poverty. Start poking around the backwoods and you're going to be shocked and probably upset. Kentucky has a long history with poverty. I mean, those hillbilly stereotypes didn't fall out of the sky. They came from someplace. Since it became a state, there's been very few years Kentucky hasn't been on the poorest state list. Kentucky's economy has been impacted by the decline in the coal mining and manufacturing jobs, leading to high unemployment rates. The state has a low educational attainment level, with many areas lacking resources and quality education. 22.1% of Kentucky's children live below the poverty line. Number 7, Alabama. You know, I thought for sure Alabama would be, towards the bottom of this list, like 2 or 3. But here they are, doing better. I shouldn't say better than I thought they'd get. There are 2 things you could find a lot of in Alabama: Crimson Tide fans and people living below the poverty line. Huntsville is the only exception. No, actually it is. It's pretty much, Huntsville's a really, really nice city. The rest of them, you should bypass at all costs. Their rural areas aren't great either. Wander into a small town and it's 50-50. It's going to be a decent place. Alabama has a high unemployment rate, and a significant portion of the population is living in rural areas with limited economic opportunities, meaning they don't have jobs. You used to have jobs when, a farm needed a whole bunch of people to work on it. Nowadays, everything's automated. You don't need 200 people to work a farm. Alabama is one of those states that struggles with limited access to health care. And this, of course, like we said, in rural areas, that's how it is. They don't have a bunch of giant hospitals in rural areas, and people have to travel long distances to get to a hospital or a doctor. So a lot of people will blow it off. This leads to more problems and contributes to higher poverty rates. 22.8% of Alabama's children live below the poverty line. Number 6, Arkansas. Now, even though Arkansas does have some decent-sized cities like Pine Bluff, Little Rock, and the whole Rogers, Springdale area up there in the northwest corner, life in Arkansas can be a bit of a challenge, especially when your morning commute involves dodging chickens instead of traffic, and the biggest event in town is who's got the best tractor. Arkansas is a beautiful state, but it has a history of being backwards. Other than the northwest corner of the state, they don't have many jobs, and they don't have a lot of educated people, which would inspire businesses in the tech and manufacturing industries to move to Arkansas. Now, they have some, I'm not saying there's none, but a lot of the more high-tech ones, they're not going to move to Arkansas. Again, the northwest corner is Arkansas, it's really not Arkansas, so eliminate that from everything I'm saying. Why are the children of Arkansas living in poverty? Arkansas's economy heavily relies on agriculture and manufacturing, not high-end manufacturing, sectors that typically offer lower wages. The state faces challenges with low educational attainment and has one of the lowest rates of kids leaving high school and going on to college. 22.9% of Arkansas's children live below the poverty line. Number 5, New Mexico. New Mexico's had a host of problems for a very long time, and they always seem to be getting worse. They have some great cities. Albuquerque I like. I love Santa Fe, New Mexico. Beautiful state if you're into the whole desert thing. They just don't have a lot of jobs. They don't have a lot of good paying jobs. And it seems to me like people really aren't big fans of going to school here. New Mexico has a high unemployment rate, and a significant portion of the population is also living in rural areas out in the middle of the freaking desert. And the state struggles with low educational outcomes, including low high school graduation rates and limited access to quality education. In other words, they got a lot more bad apple schools than they got good apple schools. 23% of New Mexico's children live below the poverty line. Number 4, Washington, D.C. I get it, it's not a state, but honestly, if I don't include it, people give me a hard time about that. If I do include it, people give me a hard time about including it. So I'm in a no-win situation, but I will tell you a lot of research places that compile these lists consider it a state, at least for the lists. And please, no one copy and paste the thing in the Constitution that says it can't be a state. Yada, yada, yada. Who cares? But Washington, D.C. suffers from the same problems that plague other urban areas. Crime, poverty, underfunded schools, underfunded everything. Despite being a metropolitan area, Washington, D.C. has significant income inequality, with a high cost of living that makes it difficult for low-income families to make ends meet in the city or district, whatever. And then when you look at their education challenges, their disparities in educational quality and resources between different areas within the city are extreme. Now, this is the few ones that everyone's got access to healthcare, or I should say a lot of them do. Problem is, terribly expensive in this area, so a lot of people will put things off. 23.9% of Washington, D.C.'s children live below the poverty line. Number 3, West Virginia. Yep, West Virginia has been known for its poverty rate for a very long time. I mean, this state has been beat up over the last few decades. The coal industry's going away, high unemployment rates, the opioid crisis. I know a girl there who had bats in her apartment building, and they let them live there because they cut down on mosquitoes. Get rid of the bats and buy a couple of those electric shock lights for them. Yeah, if this is the first time you've been to this channel and you really don't know much about West Virginia, they are knocking it out of the park when it comes to poverty. I mean, if poverty was a good thing, they're excelling in it. This is a state that just relied heavily on the coal industry, and as that started to fade away, it's not completely gone, not saying that, it's just not what it was years ago. Since they were so dependent on it, when it started going away, all the jobs went away and they didn't have anything else to employ the residents at that scale. The educational challenges are a nightmare there. The state struggles with low educational attainment and limited resources for the schools. Not a lot of people paying taxes because they don't have jobs, so they start cutting funding for schools and everything else. Like we talked about Arkansas and a couple other places earlier, if you don't have an educated workforce, high-paying jobs don't come to your state. 25% of West Virginia's children live below the poverty line. Number 2, Louisiana. Here we go for another southern state. You know, it's rare to see one of them suffering from poverty. I mean, you never hear about that in the South. Louisiana has a lot of problems, and a lot of it stems from the education level of its residents. It's not very high. This leads to not great paying jobs and a whole bunch of people on welfare. And it's not just in the cities. Their rural areas are even worse than the poverty going on in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Shreveport. Louisiana is another state that their economy is highly dependent on oil and gas, which is prone to fluctuations. This instability affects the job security of the residents and income levels. The state has a low high school graduation rate and limited access to higher education, especially in the rural areas. 26.7% of Louisiana's population lives below the poverty line. All right, the question of the day. Would you prefer a place with 4 distinct seasons or somewhere with a more consistent climate? Do you want it to be 70 degrees all the time, or do you want to see some snow and the leaves falling from the trees, or do you like palm trees? What's your deal? Let us know in the comment section below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Mississippi. I'm sure a lot of you had this one swirling around in your head as soon as I told you what this video was all about. The levels of poverty Mississippi has achieved are mind-boggling. It's almost like they are actively trying to get worse. It's like someone's trying to run down the real estate prices in a whole state so they can just buy the entire state outright. So why is Mississippi so poor? Mississippi has one of the lowest per capita incomes in the United States. The state relies heavily on agriculture and low-wage industries, offering limited high-paying jobs and opportunities. Mississippi ranks low in educational attainment. Like so many other states, schools in impoverished areas often lack resources, contributing to the cycle of poverty that never ends. 27.7% of Mississippi's children live below the poverty line. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. If you did, you probably like one of the 2 videos being suggested right now. Go ahead and give one of those a click. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.